Hey everyone, it's Mike from BitBeamCannon, and with me as always is Corey from BitBeamCannon. Say hi, Corey.
Hey, how's it going?
And this video is just going to be a quick update of all of our projects and other things that are going on at the moment. And we'll start with the first project that most of you probably already know about, but we haven't given a public update about recently, which is Metro Siege, the retro Amiga-based fighting game similar to things like Final Fight and Streets of Rage. So what we've been doing recently has been mostly progress being made by Alex, which is he actually created an entire scripting system so that we can very quickly and conveniently script actual cinematic scenes, which will allow us to very nicely transition from actual gameplay to, for example, the intro of a boss, and we just recently added a full dialogue system. So when we introduce a boss or any other character or any other important thing that's going on in between gameplay that carries the plot, we get to move any character anywhere we want, switch animations, spawn objects, spawn enemies, destroy things, and even panning the camera and things like that. We get to very nicely control all of those things and pop up a dialogue window, not only with the text of whatever someone is saying, but with a nice portrait of that character that's talking and a button prompt, and then we can make that continue for as many little text windows of text as we need, and we're already putting good use to that. We've also done a lot of work with the introduction to the level 1 boss fight, and so we've got the intro working and the boss fight itself mostly working, so now it's going to be a lot of perfecting the gameplay, the precise timing, and how much damage each move does, all, like really fine-tuning the AI of the boss. And then the last thing will be to really perfect the art once we got everything working from a gameplay standard how we want it to be. And the other thing, I don't remember if I mentioned in a public video or not, but we got in the final 2 moves for Kim, so we've been perfecting those. That's the other playable character, obviously. And as for Damon Claw, as hopefully a lot of you have already seen, Corey did some more great work on some more environment stuff, specifically the environment for the level 1 boss fight for Damon Claw, which there's a nice time-lapse video which I'll link to in the description of this video. And we do every week, roughly, we make progress actually coding more of Damon Claw, and most recently we made it so that you actually can leave the end of one level and go into the next, and in this case the end of level 1, and then you walk off the right edge of the screen automatically fades, and then it fades in and you're entering the boss fight arena for the level 1 boss fight. And so Corey made that environment, we got that in the game, and so the next step is going to be to actually design and animate the boss. So stay tuned for that. We'll link to that latest video in that playlist for, I think it's called Making Games with Construct 2 or something like that.
Or creating a game.
Yes.
I believe it's creating, yeah.
Yep, creating a game from scratch in Construct 2, something like that. But we'll link to it regardless, and you'll be able to see the exact progress we're making. So what we're trying to do as quickly as possible is create what is called a vertical slice for each game, which in this case will be a nice clean main menu screen, maybe one intro cinematic screen, and then being able to go in and start playing level 1, get all the way to the boss, do the boss fight, and then enter level 2. And we're trying to reach that sort of milestone of a really polished initial few minutes of gameplay experience for both Metro Siege and Damon Claw. So that's sort of our focus at the moment. And I've been busy in my day job quite a bit recently. I'm a co-founder of a business called Brash Monkey. We created and have been selling a 2D modular animation tool called Spriter. And so we're working not only on the sequel, and now that the core data format and engine for Spriter 2 is done, and we can start finishing up and polishing the actual core feature set of Spriter 2, we've just announced and kind of revealed our roadmap for the next phase. Once Spriter 2 is rock solid, we're going to be working on a really advanced procedural suite of features that you can add on to Spriter 2 that will really allow people to do some amazing things and take it beyond a tool meant for animating one game effect or simple scene at a time or character, and really make it very easy for even a single creative person or a small team to be able to create really rich and sophisticated animated content, or even entire cartoons or cartoon series, much easier and faster than what it currently takes entire teams much longer to do. So
yeah, that was my thought when seeing the Alchemist feature set. Is like, I was like, well, this is beyond games, you know? I mean, most people have a certain standard or threshold for the quality of game animation and stuff. Not that it's low, but it's, you know, you're not going to think about it as a cartoon, but it seems to me like there's full-blown cartoon-like features in there that's pretty exciting, actually, I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal, is to bridge that gap, to really give someone, and I think that sort of convergence is happening and going to happen more and more, where a creative studio could literally create the same assets and use them in the actual game or in an actual animated series, either to put directly on something like YouTube or even broadcast. Once we're able to get the full initial feature set for Alchemist down, it really is going to enable people to do some really amazing stuff. And just to give more detail to it, the whole idea of procedural animation. So let's say you get your creative team or your artist has a really specific vision of how characters or environments or objects should look and move and animate. And so they can set that up for the character. And let's say you animate a walk cycle for normal walking at a normal healthy speed, and then a run cycle, like really going for it and running really quickly. And once you create those two animations, you could actually set up your character to automatically blend perfectly between the two. That's what the procedural part is. It's using mathematics, and the artist tells it exactly how it should blend and to what effect and when it should start blending those animations together, depending on speed thresholds and stuff like that. So just by creating those two animations, you can get an infinity of animations that look natural, anywhere from walking fairly slowly to running very, very quickly. And that's already very useful. But the really cool thing is, let's say once you do that and it looks great, except like there's some window of speed where you go, yeah, but this particular character, I really wish he did this slightly different thing, like he lifted his legs a little higher, or leaned forward a bit more, or leaned back a bit, whatever you want. And you can just go in there and say, okay, right here, I'm going to add a third animation. And it'll automatically create a new third animation that is that exact blend that you can then hand edit. And now it'll automatically blend into that hand-edited version of that in-between variant of the movement speed.
Oh, yeah.
And then out of it. And you can set the threshold for where it should play exactly that animation, just at a fast enough speed so that the feet actually make sense going at that speed. But anyway, the point is, it gives you the best of both worlds with procedural, where it'll generate a completely smooth, infinite variety of animations from the two initial ones you set. But then it gives the artist back 100% control if they really feel like, yeah, but this character, maybe they have like a shoulder twitch or whatever weird thing, whatever super specific thing to that character. You can always go in and add that into the algorithm so that it's not just pure math that might create something a little too homogenized or too mathematical.
Right.
So that's...
Yeah, I think blending like animations together like that would save a lot of time, I would imagine, because
That's
you do spend lots of time with current tools just really perfecting a single animation, and then if you need a variation of that, you've got to make a whole new animation, and that's instantly what I thought of. It was like you could do so much with just like a handful of animations for a character. And get so much mood out of them, and emotive quality and everything. Yeah.
Especially because you get to go in and you get to keep adding super specific artistic touches anywhere in there to sort of hijack and take back control from the raw algorithm. That something that only a creative human mind can add. That real interesting nuance that gives a particular character their personality in a visual sense. You always have complete control to do that. And you can go far beyond that. You can blend way more than just one sequence or sort of number line of animations. So, for example, now that you have healthy, not tired walk and run and everything in between, you can create really tired walk and really tired run. And the same thing. And you could make it, not only is it blending between walk and run, but it's also blending between tired walk and tired run, depending on how tired your character is. So it's combining, okay, how quickly does the character have to get from point A to point B, and how tired are they? And it'll blend all those animations together to get you the exact speed and the exact level of tired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas before you might have to create, like 20 animations or something to handle all that. Like, you have your handful and you just... you can tweak those variables, so to speak, and there you go.
And this would be all right within Spriter 2 and the add-on suite of features that we call Alchemist. And the other cool thing, I mean, I could go on forever about, like, there's so many amazing things, which, you'll be able to see the video. I'll link to the video, the webpage, and the Kickstarter campaign. Even beyond that, Spriter Pro, and even, what I'm going to get into, what's on my screen right now, is the very original prototype of Spriter I made a really long time ago. Even back then, you could create your animations, and right within the animations, you could place collision boxes, as many as you want, define the exact size, and even apply variables to the specific collision box. So in a fighting game, for example, you could add a collision box for the fist when he's throwing a punch. You also have the collision box for his body so he can receive attacks. And you could even do a collision box for the head and one for the torso and so on. But you could even add those numeric values to the collision boxes so that the game engine can retrieve that data and not only know, okay, there's a collision that can happen, this is an attack, but also how much damage that attack can do or should do.
Right.
And so with Alchemist, not only are you going to be able to do all that fun stuff, but you'll actually be able to define and test the actual gameplay input. For example, if you're making a shmup or an overhead RPG game, you can set up your character so you can move around with the control pad, press button to attack or fire or anything else, and then not only assign movement and inertia to your character with any button press and so on, but also which animation should be playing, or in the case of Alchemist, not just a specific hard animation, like handmade animation, but that blending we're talking about. So if, for example, you set up a character like an RPG character or a side-scrolling platformer character, you don't just say, okay, if the player presses forward, then play walk, or then play run. What you would say is, if the player presses forward, then you add to their X inertia so they're moving, and then you play their bipedal locomotion animation set, and Alchemist will decide, based on how quickly they're moving, which blend of all of those possibilities. You know what I mean? So if you create a variable for your character that keeps track of how tired they are, or if you just directly link it to their hit points, so if they have low hit points, then they're stumbling instead of walking, or walking more slowly and breathing heavily during idle animations. All of that is going to happen automatically.
Nice.
So yeah, it's going to be really amazing. It was a lot of work to get up to that point to make sure that from a programming standpoint that we had a core foundation of code and data system that was flexible enough to handle all this. But that's where we are now. So now we're really excited to start getting in and polishing the core feature set of Spriter 2, and then quickly thereafter starting to create the Alchemist specific features. But anyway, especially since people can go see all the information and example videos themselves, I don't want to linger too long on all that stuff, but hopefully you could tell I'm really excited about it. But the other thing is, I wanted to bring up this topic because of the interesting history that Spriter has with me personally and with BitBeamCannon. And a good example of that is I've been a long time Amigan. I honed my pixel art skills that got me into the industry as a game artist on the Amiga with programs like Deluxe Paint and then Brilliance. And it was a dream of mine since early teens to make a really great Japanese arcade and console style game for the Amiga. And I was lucky enough to become friends with the nice gentleman at Pixel Glass that had already made several finished Amiga games. And we started working together. And our first project together is Metro Siege. So when I started talking to these guys and we were figuring out what type of game we should make, we all agreed, and the game I was most interested in making was a fighting game like Streets of Rage. It's my favorite genre, especially for two-player games or multiplayer games. I said to them, the only way to really do the game well and make it really competitive with console and arcade games is to use the modular animation system and create the animations for the characters out of these little body part images that we can just move around to create the illusion of all of these frames of animation using drastically less memory than would be required if they were each full frame image for all of the frames for the animations. So that's what's on the screen right now. It's the main character Alex for Metro Siege, and you can see one of his frames here from when he's about to do a jump kick, and I can just move one of these body parts so you could see there's an amazingly small, like if you look here where I scroll, these characters have a huge move set and a lot of animations, and these impact flashes and dust clouds and even these electrocuted body parts are reused for every character in the game. So if you look at actually the images used for one character, considering all those moves the character can do, it's a extremely low use of memory to end up with a very robustly animated character with more moves than exist in Streets of Rage 2 or Final Fight.
Yeah,
So,
and you can also add in those a few bits of subtle movement here and there if you want to shift pieces around somewhere that you just didn't see in games like Final Fight or Streets of Rage.
Because largely they were relying on full frame images for the animations, but we have the benefit, not only does it save a huge amount of memory, but if we want a second frame that's really subtle, we can just nudge that arm up by a pixel or down by a pixel, or swap out the head image with a head image. Like I have a couple of variant head images of Alex that I can just swap back and forth just to create that sense that the hair is moving due to inertia or wind.
Right.
So you could do really cool stuff like that very, very easily using an incredibly small amount of memory compared to doing it the traditional or full frame way. And then, like I said, the other really cool thing about programs like Spriter and what Alchemist will do is that you can add your collision boxes, you could trigger sound effects, you could add spawning points for if the characters could throw fireballs, we could create the fireball throwing animation and then create a spawning point right in the last frame of that animation or whatever appropriate frame so that the game engine knows exactly where to spawn that fireball and exactly what moment.
Yeah, and if people check out some of our older Damon Call videos where we are creating a game in Construct with the current Spriter Pro, that's exactly the kind of stuff we're doing. We're putting all of his collisions and things in there. Of course, we're building that with Construct and not on the Amiga, but it's a similar workflow. You know, you're same with enemies that do projectiles and things like that, where we're doing like a little spawn point on their hands. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally works.
Extremely useful. And anytime you can give control of how things look and how things move back to the artists and the game designers, and where you're not making it this abstraction that is just numbers in code, it makes it so much faster to end up at a much more natural and visually pleasing result. Mm-hmm. So you end up spending less time and less annoying work, kind of number monkey work, getting a better end result. And but the cool thing is, there was this prototype I created a million years ago, and now something like over a decade later, I end up dusting off, thank goodness I kept it zipped up on my hard drive somewhere, because I mentioned to Alec, if we really want to do this justice, we need to use modular animation. And I said, actually, I have a tool that I made a really long time ago that might be exactly what we need. And he was like, oh, can you send me over an example file? So I just really quickly whipped up this really silly example animation and sent it his way. And, I went to bed and woke up and he had it running perfectly on an Amiga, playing back, which was just a great sign. And it's been awesome ever since. But point is, so the very first prototype is being used with the first really high-quality Amiga game that we're able to make with Alex and John. But then the modern Spriter Pro, Corey and I are using extensively for all of our game projects that we're working on and creating with Construct 2 or Construct 3, the most prominent current project we're working on, as Corey mentioned, is Demon Claw. And that's going to come in incredibly handy, especially for the boss fights. But we're already using it for the hero animations, for most of the enemies, and come in super handy if we start doing more cinematic type scenes as well.
Right, yeah.
And the cool thing is, obviously, with what is going to be possible with Alchemist once that's done, even though we love making retro games, and Spriter Pro is not geared directly toward retro games, it's still extremely handy for creating the art and animation for retro games, and it just makes it easier and easier. And just as an example, I have this great animation that Corey made. So he created these great, and you probably, a lot of you already recognize, this is a spoof on the intro, or it's a spoof on the Mega Man series.
Right, yeah.
And but anyway, just let the animation play. So Corey was able to do the art in Photoshop in this case, and then just load it all into Spriter, or put it all in a folder so he could access it with Spriter, and then go to town actually bringing it to life.
Yeah. Each of these is it's just kind of a little funny skit, you know.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff.
Little joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's handy for this because Spriter's pretty lean, I think, for this kind of thing. Like if you need to put together a fairly quick example of something, it worked great for this kind
Spriter Pro loads fast. You're not buried in a bunch of menus to make simple things happen. You could just drag an image in from the file palette here, for example, and then move around in your timeline, move it around, and it'll move from point A to point B. You're not forced to assign bones to things that you're not actually going to need a skeletal structure to animate with, and all that stuff. So it can be quick and convenient. And Corey's especially experienced with it, so he managed to animate a fairly sophisticated scene, even with an environment and a simulated UI. But anyway, I won't go on much more about that. All links will be in there. Remind me, Corey, when I'm writing the description in the video, I can also link to your Twitter account so they can see the other awesome and funny animations that you've made with the same theme.
Yeah, sure. That's typically how I post them. I've shared a few of them through our BitBeam Twitter as well. I don't know if I've done it with every single one, but just so people may have seen these already, but if not, you can always check it out there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we've been working on. That's the tool that's been a big part of my life for over a decade, since the first time I created that initial prototype. And so stay tuned. Like once a week, we try to make sure we make some decent progress with Demon Claw, and Metro Siege progress continues. I'm going to get back into that this weekend. And we're specifically focusing on continuing to perfect the boss fight for level 1. And I want to clean up the environment and eventually get the unique enemies for level 2 in there.
Yep.
That's it. I won't make this video take any longer. Thanks very much, Corey, for joining me for this update video, and thanks everyone for watching.